Are you ready? It's time to rock the health and political world simultaneously. This is the moment you all been waiting for. Welcome back, Congressman Paul, to the Robert Scott Bell Show. So glad to have you back. It's a big day.
Thank you. Good to be with you.
Well, we're simulcasting today through runronpaul.com as well as ronpaul2012.com. The Money Bomb is here. Congressman Paul, you're up for the big debate. It starts today in season. Are your energies up and ready?
My energies are up. I'm ready to go, and I sure hope I represent all our people well.
Yeah, well, we're all excited. There are parties all over, meetup parties, people coming together to support you. Your new book is doing phenomenally well, Liberty Defined, and you have loads of fans here through the Natural News Network because of your stance for health, freedom, and liberty like nobody else over the years.
Oh, great. Glad there are people out there that are interested in that.
Oh, absolutely.
Good alternative to the mess that we're creating here in Washington when it comes to health care, I'll tell you that.
Oh, that's for sure. Now, I've often spoken about the issue of health and healing with you over the years, and we've talked about, it's one thing to recognize the Constitution and principles and such, but if you're so feeble of body because we're so sick and so dependent on drugs, for instance, how is it possible that we can take that information and act on it? We also have the energy to act to be healthy.
Yeah, there are the two issues there. One, doing what we should do and can do for ourselves and the knowledge that science provides us. At the same time, it's the political thing that I deal with in Washington, allowing freedom of choice. This is the big issue. And, of course, the government gets in the way, and they want monopolies. They want everybody forced into the system, penalize you if you don't, go into the government system. And the record is so poor with conventional health care, except in certain areas. I think they do a pretty good job. But just the idea of having freedom of choice and alternatives, that should be accepted by all people in the society.
Well, how many of your fellow congressmen and women there actually even understand that there's a monopoly, or even know things like you reference in your book, like the Flexner Report of 1910, which kind of set the stage for the monopoly 100 years later as Obamacare?
I doubt too many pay much attention to that, and it's interesting. I've talked in public, about the raw milk issue,
yes.
And allowing people to drink raw milk. And I was working with this liberal who said, "Oh yeah, he was all for legalizing hemp and marijuana, but we had to have the government protect us against the chance of getting bad raw milk, so therefore he had to be a consumer protectionist," which is rather a bizarre position. Of course, the libertarian free market position is you get to make your choices all the time. People have no right to defraud you or hurt you with certain products. But I always thought that was fascinating. There's just too many people here like that think people, and I've had other members of Congress tell me, well, the people are too dumb, Yeah. But, of course, the politicians are always smart,
Yeah.
And the bureaucrats will always act in our interest. And lo and behold, sometimes they act in the interest of the drug companies or insurance companies, who knows what.
Yeah, big time. I always often wondered, is like, how far will they take this, Congressman? Will they say, hey, moms now have to pasteurize their breast milk because we're afraid there are microbes in mom's breast milk?
Well, breast milk is very dangerous. If you have it in a bottle, you can't even take it on an airplane. So, you got to be careful.
Well, yeah. So it's not much of a stretch. Now, my good friend Jonathan Emord, who you know very well, he's written some legislation for you. He said that the Health Freedom Act is almost ready to maybe be reintroduced. You've done this a few sessions now to restore sanity. How's that looking?
Well, I don't know the exact date that we have planned, but it is on the agenda, and we do it all the time, so we want to make sure we do it again soon.
Well, we're looking forward to that as well. I think more traction can be gained, as we've seen with your efforts to audit the Fed. Stunning in your career that so many finally came along and said, wow, Ron's on to something here. And you're scratching your head, wow, what took you so long?
All of a sudden it sounds like common sense. I often wondered how they've been able to get away with this, because common sense tells you that it shouldn't work. And one time I said this on the air that, I can teach grade school kids and high school kids about monetary policy, and they understand it. So the guy came back, he said, you mean to say that you're saying Bernanke, who has his Ph.D. and who taught at Princeton and all this, is not smart enough? No, I says, he just accepts the wrong ideas, and of course he sees there's a goal of central economic planning.
Yeah.
I think people like Bernanke and others actually believe it, but I think common sense should tell us that it's not a very good way to go.
Well, you know, and I like higher education, but I don't think the idea of getting into debt to the tune of $50,000, $100,000 or more is really a good thought form in that regard. And of course, people like Bernanke, highly schooled, PhDs, etc., that, you know, in order to learn what we know, common sense, you almost have to unlearn a lot of the indoctrination from these traditional schools at this point.
Yeah, you know, I work on the assumption, because this is what I personally experienced, that there's a lot of natural tendencies for young people to want to be left alone and accept, you know, free markets and libertarian ideas. And I think that might be one of the reasons why a lot of young people like what I've been saying. But, you know, I had those instincts, but then I think as I got older and listened to my teachers and listened to the radio and TV and listened to the government, I thought, oh, gosh, I must be, you know, I guess I'm wrong. You know, and it sort of knocked those natural tendencies out. And then later on, when I discovered Austrian economics in particular, I had to unlearn those things that were pumped into my head and decide with confidence then that there are a lot of smart people who know and can explain economics better than I can, that I'm naturally in agreement with them. So I was very pleased to make that discovery.
Well, it is thrilling to kind of come back to common sense in this context. And, you know, I'm thinking about also in terms of foreign policy, because if we look, you know, you're a doctor, I do homeopathic medicine, which you've acknowledged even in your book there in Liberty Defined, that if we exhaust our immune system by, you know, staging it down to autoimmunity, we attack all the time, we'll exhaust our immune defenses, and then we can't defend ourselves. I liken what we're doing in an interventionist international way of the same concept. We're exhausting all of our resources so that even if we want to defend ourselves, we'll be less capable to do so. I want you to throw that back in the neocons' faces when they say Ron Paul is soft on defense. It's like, how are you going to pay for anything when you're bankrupt?
Yeah. Well, one thing I do is I work real hard on making people separate the words defense and military.
Yes.
They say, oh, you want to cut defense, you want to cut defense. I said, no, I don't want to cut any defense. I want a better defense. I want more money spent on our defense, but I want to cut out the militarism around the world that hinders our defense and bankrupts our country. And, of course, you know, we have some pretty good Republican credentials on that when you talk about Eisenhower and Robert Taft and others. They warned about this and thought it was dangerous doing this. So it isn't like I've invented this for the conservative wing of the Republican Party that we should be cautious about military spending. So, but I think it's coming our way. We're getting a little more support with some of the new members in Congress, and others, and some of the members that have been there are starting to shift their attitude. And they've always been more supportive behind the scenes than they have publicly, because they've worked on the assumption that to be a Republican, you had to be a warmonger. Yeah.
Well, and now we're seeing the Obama administration taking lots of credit, swelling with pride over the Osama bin Laden thing, and never considering, what has it been, a trillion or more dollars, 10 years, how many thousands of lives have been lost in the pursuit of a guy. You know, how much does it take, if we're the greatest military power in the history of the world, to find somebody like this?
And then when we find him, he's practically by himself, and probably, if we ever get down to it, he probably wasn't armed. There was no firefight. There was no shooting. And it reminded me of how they, you know, captured
Hussein.
Yeah, captured Saddam Hussein, you know, in a rat hole.
Yeah.
But, you know, and they didn't, you know, have to fill him with bullets in the rat hole. They took him out and hung him, you know,
right.
And had a trial. But here, the same thing. It was an old house sitting there, and after 10 years.
Yeah.
And I, many years ago, I kept saying, keep your eye on the target, radical Islam. There's a few people out there that we have to deal with. But no, they go into nation building, invading, occupying nations, spreading it. Now we're into Yemen, and you know, the real irony, and I mentioned this on the floor yesterday, was this business on Pakistan. We bomb Pakistan, we kill civilians there, they get upset with us, and we give them billions of dollars, then it looks like they probably protected Saddam Hussein, Osama bin Laden all these years. And I think it just reflects how ridiculous our foreign policy is.
Well, and I really don't think many people, unfortunately, understand how the immune system works as we talk about it from a physiological perspective in the healthcare field, but also how these principles apply throughout life. I think that's what's been great, and what the young people have really understood about you is that you've lived a life this way, and they said, not many people are. There's something different about this guy. And who would have expected, as you said, you were as surprised as anybody that where the energy was coming from, enthusiasm out of the college campuses.
Which is very encouraging. I try to remain upbeat, and long-term I'm optimistic, but, I get energized when I see young people willing to listen, because that's where the most enthusiasm is coming from. But they now are influencing the older generations. I see it so often that young people come in, they're the most enthusiastic, and they bring their parents, and I ask point blankly, have the young people influenced you? And they're very proud of the fact that their kids have been able to get involved and interested and engage in these ideas.
Yeah, I'm a parent. You're a grandparent, twice over, great grandparent at this point. And I'm thinking, the crime of being born in America is suddenly you're enslaved to a debt that it was of your not of your creation. And I think that where are the people thinking in morals and ethics and conscionability about this enslaving children that are yet to be born?
Yeah, and we all use that, and I always use it too, about the enslavement and the debt for the other people. But I think the consequences catching up to it is, I think we better worry about the immediate effect of all this because of the inflation that's coming, the devaluation of the currency, and the weak economy today. There's an announcement that unemployment is getting worse again, and not that it really recovered, but it's getting worse again. So the consequences are right here today, and they can't paper over. It used to be, well, we'll get out of this recession by just printing a lot of money and running up the debt. Well, they've been doing that for 3 years, and they haven't had a real recovery.
Yeah, well, I think that the average American is now understanding that inflation is not the rising price, but so much as what they've been doing at the Fed. And that's, again, stunning. Since you ran for president 4 or so years ago, the whole world has changed, much less here in the United States. I can see you on the debate stand tonight or through the debates, and these other Republican candidates are going to be co-opting the language you used 4 years ago. Are you prepared to deal with that?
No, I think you have to accept it and welcome it, because that's what you want to do. You want to invade other people's ideas, and they do. They're starting to talk about, they're putting too much money now. But to win, you actually have to get the ideas into both parties, because the Keynesian economic theories were accepted by both Republicans and Democrats, and the foreign policy of Woodrow Wilson was accepted by both parties. So for us to win, we have to convince the people across the board about the foreign policy, the monetary policy, the entitlement system, and the debt problems. And hopefully we'll continue to have the successes that we've had in the last couple of years.
That would be great. Now, coming back to healthcare as we, heading into the debate tonight. By the way, we're running this through runronpaul.com and ronpaul2012.com. If you want to support Congressman Paul and his potential run here, there's a money bomb, and he set the record the last time through. I think 7 million in one day. We'll see what can happen today. It's very exciting. When we talk about healthcare, as a physician, you don't have a problem hanging a shingle next to a homeopath. Why should the government care whether you choose to see a medical doctor, homeopath, or other kind of doctor?
Well, they think they're smarter than us, and they're smarter than our patients and the citizens of the country. And all individuals aren't smart enough to do the right thing. But that proves that bureaucrats and politicians shouldn't make the decision either, because when they make a mistake, they make a mistake for all of us. And that's why the principle of freedom of choice is so good. It's not to claim that every one of us will always make a correct decision, but it's just that when freedom of choice is offered, the maximum good can be achieved.
Yeah, I liken the tyranny, when we talk about tyranny in the medical realm, it's so amazing. I mean, you have a case in Michigan of this Marian Godboldo who was trying to protect her child from the danger of vaccines. Her young daughter was harmed, and so she kept her other daughter away until she was a teenager. And then they caught her up so fast that she had massive psychiatric disorders that resulted. They put her on another psychiatric medicine. The mom said, I don't want to do that. And the Child Protective Services then sent in the police. The SWAT team made this woman a felon simply for saying, I've identified what's happening. It's wrong. I'm cutting her off the drug. And now the police state is involved with the pharmaceutical state.
What a tragedy! It has undermined the principle of who's responsible for the children.
Yeah.
It started, with education. The state is responsible for free education. Then it went into medicine, and now it will be in every single thing that we do. Everything we put in our mouths or into our bodies, it'll be a government decision rather than a personal decision.
Yeah, that's been a big theme here on the Robert Scott Bell Show recently. Parental rights, responsibility, and authority, as the government seemingly just takes children away on a whim if we don't agree medically. It's like the state religion is now modern medicine as opposed to, the freedom to worship as you please.
Right, no doubt about it.
Well, we've got a lot more to do here, Congressman Paul. I know you've got to run. You've got to get ready for this big debate. Any message for all the people that love and love you, cherish you dearly today?
Well, my main message is to thank them for the support, because when they send the support our way, it's very helpful to me. It encourages me and gives me the energy I need.